Hello, welcome to the Mythology Manifest. Today I will be discussing the impact of the Prince of Troy, Paris, kidnapping the Queen of Sparta, now known as Helen of Troy, and how this started one of the most well-known wars in all of mythology and legend, the Trojan War, which was noted down in the Iliad by Homer in the 8th century BC. I hope you enjoy. So, before I pick up where I left off in my previous video, I am going to explain the miracle of the main character of the Iliad, Achilles. He was the child of the mortal king of Thessaly, Peleus, and the sea goddess, Thetis. The two of them had had children before, but all had mysteriously died or disappeared, or at least that's what Peleus believed. Thetis, however, knew otherwise. She knew that one day her child would become greater than Peleus and would have to go into war, and there was already a prophecy about any child of hers living a short and unhappy life. So she sought the help of her mother, the Titan of the sea, Tethys, on how to make her child invulnerable to harm. Tethys told Thetis she must bathe her child in the river Styx in the underworld, then cover him in the food of the gods ambrosia, and put them in a fire overnight, and that would make them a powerful warrior and almost impossible to kill. In her excitement, Thetis got the order mixed up and lathered her first child in ambrosia before putting them straight in a fire. The child burnt to death, and Thetis lied to Peleus, saying that the child had been kidnapped. This happened with at least 6 more children, until Thetis had another son with Peleus, who they named Achilles. Thetis went back to Tethys and told her that her way of making her son invulnerable wasn't working. The sea titan went over what Thetis had to do one more time, and the goddess of the sea realised what she had been doing wrong. She thanked her mother and ran back to Thessaly. She took the baby Achilles from his crib and took him to the underworld, where she held him by his heel and dunked the rest of him in the river Styx, meaning that his entire body, except for his heel, was invulnerable. Sound familiar? After this, she took him back to Thessaly and coated him in ambrosia, before putting him in a fire, making sure all except his ankle would cook overnight. When morning came, Thetis woke and saw Achilles still living in the fireplace. Just as she was about to remove him, Peleus stormed in, and seeing his wife looking at their son in a roaring fire filled him with rage. He did not allow her to explain and banished her from Thessaly. Little did he know that she had just made Achilles, except for his heel, invulnerable to harm, and that she would actually see him almost every night as she took up residence in the waters of Thessaly. The reason I explained that was because Achilles is the main character in the Trojan War, and this is why he was such a formidable hero. We now follow Achilles to the 10th year of the Trojan War, and he's roughly around 18 at this point. They have just sacked an outlying village of Troy, and Achilles has kidnapped a woman and claimed her as a prize. Her name was Briseis. At the same time, King Agamemnon of Mycenae had also won a prize, a priestess of Apollo called Chryses. Her father, a priest with the same name, came and asked for the return of his daughter. Agamemnon and the other Greeks laughed at the priest and refused to give Chryses back. Because of this, Apollo sent a plague on the Greek camp, which killed off many warriors. Achilles demanded Agamemnon return the girl to appease Apollo, and the Mycenaean king agreed, on the term that he would have Achilles' prize, Briseis. This led to a physical fight between the two, which was interrupted by the goddess Athena. Eventually, Agamemnon returned Chryses, but took Briseis, and so Achilles refused to fight as he believed his reputation and honour had been tarnished. Apollo ceased the plague when his priestess was returned, but then his twin sister, Artemis, grew incredibly angry with the Greeks and caused a drought. To appease her, Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia, and this led to a very negative outcome for him when he returned home years later. But Artemis did stop the drought. After this, the Greeks had many battles with the Trojans, which Achilles refused to take part in despite the Greek pleas. A notable one was the battle between Paris and Menelaus over Helen. Just as Menelaus was about to kill Paris, Aphrodite swept in and saved him. She took him into the palace of Troy and had Helen sleep with him. This is one of the only times we see Paris in the war until the very end. After this, the war takes a break for a while, and Zeus asks Athena and Hera if they can just end the war. The goddesses refuse, and Athena flies back down to the earth. She has Pandarus, a Trojan, shoot at Menelaus to restart the war, but she also protects Menelaus by moving the arrow out of the way so it would only scratch him, like a mother brushing a fly away from her gently sleeping child. And that is a direct quote from the Iliad Book 4. With the war restarted, we see Agamemnon attempt to be a good leader, and the Greeks trying to get Achilles to rejoin the war, which he refuses to do. We also get to see deeper into the character of Hector, as we see his wife, Andromache, beg him not to go into war again, for the sake of her and their son, Astyanax. We see how much he cares for his family, but see that the city and lives of his men are equally important to him. We even get told that Helen is bored of the war and wants to go back to Menelaus, but who wouldn't when Paris was such a wimp? But she's not allowed to return to her husband and is trapped in Troy by the Trojans and Aphrodite herself. With the Trojans winning and Greek morale low, Patroclus, who was Achilles' friend, I'll be discussing that in my next video, went to Achilles and said if he wouldn't go back to war, then Patroclus would wear Achilles' armour and pretend to be him to inspire the Greek army and scare the Trojans. Achilles still refused to go back to battle, and so Patroclus donned his armour and took to the battlefield. With everyone thinking Achilles had returned, the Greeks were inspired and improved their fighting, but the Trojans did not back down. Eventually, Hector killed Patroclus, thinking he was Achilles, and stole his armour. This is a major turning point for the entire war. As a battle broke out over Patroclus' body, a Greek soldier returns to the camp and tells Achilles what has happened. Together, Achilles and a soldier wept over the death of Patroclus, and Achilles is overcome with a black cloud of grief and goes to his mother, Thetis, in tears. Thetis goes to the god of metalwork, Hephaestus, and has him fashion Achilles' new armour and an impressive new shield that depicts all aspects of life, which would impress and scare the opposing Trojans. Achilles refuses to eat until Athena force-feeds him ambrosia, and he storms into battle. When Hector sees the real Achilles charge onto the battlefield, he runs. They lap Troy multiple times until eventually they face one another, and Achilles kills Hector and ties the prince's body to his chariot and drags it around Troy for days. He eventually returns to the Greek camp with Hector's body, and they hold funeral games for Patroclus as well as a funeral. The Iliad ends when Priam, Hector's father, sneaks into the Greek camp after the funeral games and begs Achilles for Hector's body, which has been preserved by Apollo. After talking for a while, Achilles gives Hector's body back and Priam returns it to Troy. That may be where the Iliad ends, but it's not where the war ends. The Greeks believe that they cannot win and cannot breach the walls of Troy, and tell the Trojans that they give up and will return to Greece, which the Trojans believe. Just as the Greeks are about to leave, Odysseus is approached by Athena, who gives him an idea, which he tells the other Greeks. They do not actually leave, but break the wood off their ships and build a large wooden horse, which they all hid inside. They wheeled it to the foot of Troy, where it was found by the priest Laocoon, who tries to tell the Trojans it is a trap, but he is killed by a serpent sent by Athena. And Sinon tells the Trojans it is an apology gift from the Greeks, and was shaped like a horse because Poseidon had made horses and had also helped build Troy. Before bringing it into the city, some Trojan warriors went and checked where the Greek ships had been docked, only to find them gone, which they assumed was because the Greeks had left, instead of thinking that they had turned their ship into a massive horse, and so they brought it into Troy. The minute they did, the Greek soldiers burst out and set Troy on fire. It was a massacre, as they slaughtered every Trojan they could find. Very few Trojans escaped, but a few, including the son of Aphrodite, Aeneas, who has his own story later on, which I will discuss in another video. Priam and Hecate were killed, and Menelaus found Helen. He was about to kill her for leaving him and causing a 10-year war, when she begged him not to. Her beauty astounded him, and he found himself unable to kill her, and instead she returned with him to Sparta. As for Achilles, there had always been a prophecy about him living a short and unhappy life. The latter part of this came true at this point. As he was busy slaughtering Trojans, Paris found him and fired an arrow. Apollo guided the arrow straight to Achilles' heel, the only vulnerable part of him, and it killed him instantly. I find this part of the story incredibly disappointing because of all the people Achilles could have died at the hands of. It was Paris. Cowardly Paris. But that was the end of the war. Achilles and almost every Trojan was dead, and Troy had been burned to the ground. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it informative and a good summary of the Trojan War, please like, comment or subscribe. Thanks for helping keep classics alive. I will see you next time on the Mythology Manifest.